Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the panel discussion for the marine policy session of the 17th WOF. I'd like to invite all panel discussants and moderator to come up to the stage and take your seats.
Thank you. I am Kim Gyu-hwan, the moderator of this panel discussion. We have gone through 4 presentations highlighting very important points. I really appreciate our 4 presenters. I was deeply inspired by the presentations, although these presentations are cover different areas and they are all on the same page. And now, we would like to have a panel discussion with 3 new panelists joining us. And we will have a Q&A session if time allows as well. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A session toward the end of this panel discussion. We will open the floor for the questions. Let me introduce our panelists for this panel discussion. We are joined by Mr. CHOI Sang Hei, Vice President of KMI. Dr. Choi is serving as the Vice President of Korea Maritime Institute, and he is covering development and operation of the supply chain, the port, and the logistics policy. And he is also in charge of the Vice President of the Research Development at KMI. And he is an expert member of the National Science and Technology Advisory Committee, a member of National Logistics Policy Committee. And we are also joined by Mr. Bae Jae-ryu of Ocean Platform. Mr. Bae worked for Daewoo Shipbuilding Marine Engineering for 35 years, where he performed basic ship design work, technology strategy, and technology management work. Recently, he has been developing technology to convert the small ships into eco-friendly ships. Last but not least, we are joined by Dr. Shin Kyung-hoon of Hanyang University. He has been working and teaching at Hanyang University since 2003 and has been carried out the education and research with the focus on the marine ecological and environmental diagnosis. Now he is a full professor and a director at the Institute of Ocean and Atmospheric Science of Hanyang University. He actively published many papers as well. Thank you very much for joining us today. Following the order of the introduction, I'd like to turn to Dr. Choi first.
감사합니다.
Thank you, moderator. So, I'd like to thank all 4 presenters, and I wanted to discuss 3 topics of what was presented. First of all, information about ocean science.
회장님께서
The presentation delivered by Dr. John Nyberg, the use of oceanography, and the second
topic is about eco-friendly ships, and finally with Mr. Iki-taek, topic of ocean industry. So those are the 3 topics I'd like to touch upon.
The importance of information cannot be overemphasized. Hydrographic information and oceanographic information and various object-related information will come at such an important crossroad, which will determine the future of our science and technology. And as I serve the National Committee, if you take a look at the various challenges in the oceans and maritime industry, you can see that there has been such an extensive R&D effort over the last 2 to 3, or especially for 3 to 4 years. There have been many projects going on. Now, with the rapid advances in smart technology, maritime information generation and production project, and utilization of such information in various areas, there have been such an extensive R&D effort, but the thing is that they are not really focused and concentrated, rather than that they have been scattered here and there.
그리고
The autonomous ship and then smart buoy and waterways and port management and port operation. In these aspects, the integrated generation and production of information and data and the shared use of such information is of greatest importance in order to enhance the probability of success in the R&D project. However, the integrated use and shared use and generation of information has been faced with various limitations. Down the road, in order to enhance the maritime R&D efficiency, in order to secure sufficient budget, it would be quite important to ensure the joint production of information and data, as well as the shared use of data through a dedicated body. In order to do that, we need to ensure the openness of the information and its dissemination of information as well. All at the same time, we also have to make sure the efficient use as well as the security of the information, and this will make a significant contribution to the promotion of the marine economy.
번째로는
Secondly, I'd like to take a look at the ocean's logistics. The key buzzword nowadays is when will we complete the transition to an eco-friendly fuel? Transition to eco-friendly fuel and the expanded ship order accordingly will be the big agenda and obligation for the Korean shipping industry. As you have heard in the presentation, changes in the ships and ship orders from LNG to methanol, ammonia, and hydrogen and electricity will be happening in the future. I think the order is almost determined, but most importantly, the order of that transition of fuel, I think, will depend on which fuel is most productive, most efficient, and most affordable in supply. In addition, from production, storage, shipping, bunkering, depending on who takes leadership, the whole market will be dominated by that player. So among different companies and nations in the fight to get that leadership in the ship logistics and shipping, ship engine, storage, container will be the first to transition. There are many different modes of this, but whose technology will be most widely used in bunkering, loading and unloading has to happen at the same time, including IT. What is the most cost-effective technology and the most eco-friendly activity of this whole process to attract the very large ships? These technologies, to port these technologies must first developed as a prerequisite. For eco-friendly fuels compared to bunker C, it has 5 to 6 times more expensive prices according to the predictions. So for Korean shipping companies, transitioning to an eco-friendly ship is a very urgent matter for us to make our ports competitive and to lead the eco-friendly fuel market and to transition to the ports to these ships requires full aspects of government policy support. And moving on to the final topic about ocean industries. If we look at the entire oceans and fisheries industries, this involves shipbuilding, platform building, materials development, leisure, tourism, basically 9 different sectors. For today, our oceans industry is shadowed by other industries. There is no star industry in shipbuilding, for example. So oceans and fisheries related industries are mainly SMEs and startups. And in the future, oceans industry, the level of interest is quite low. Going forward, if Korea is to become an oceans power, ocean companies need to invest in the sustainable future, and we need to find a industry that can be familiarized with the public. We need to make bold investments in technology to find the next star item for the ocean's technology, and young talents need to be provided with full support. Thank you. That'll be all.
네, 최상희 부원장.
Thank you, Dr. Chair, for such an invaluable comment. Now I'd like to turn to Mr. Bae Jae-ryu of Ocean Platform. Thank you. Very nice to meet you all. I am leading Ocean Platform. I'm also in teaching at Korea Maritime University. Thank you very much for having me today. I'm so emotional today because I was born and raised in Kadokdo, and I'm currently based in Kadokdo as well. And October 25th, tomorrow, there is one dedicated session to Kadokdo Island, my hometown and where I'm currently based. And I really appreciate this special session. As you know, Kadok New Port will come into operation by 2030. And I believe Korea, the Busan, will be the host city of World Expo 2030. I think things have turned into our favor. I really appreciate the presentations, especially Dr. Lee of KMI highlighted that there is such a great change when it comes to the ship fuel. Ship builders and ship parts manufacturers are focused so much on fuel and the options for the ship fuels, because the variety of ship fuel means there should be a variety of ship parts and components. And with that, we would be able to build eco-friendly vessels regardless of the size, and this will put us ahead of other nations. So, according to the mass of the ship fuel, each has different characteristics, and the erosion properties would all vary as well, from the pump all the way to the compressor valve and pipes. All these parts and components should be developed from new. That is why the maritime industry is focusing so much on technological development, and this would require a massive investment as well. So I'd like to ask for your support in this regard. And the third presenter, the industrialization of the seaweed farm, with the opening of the Kadok New International Airport, and the airport will serve as the hub of logistics. But if we are to use the international airport, then you'd have to waste on the road at least 2 days on the way to the airport, on the way back to home. But with the opening of the Kadok International Airport, we will be able to save some time, a significant time. And if we start our investment on this various front from now on, then we will be able to generate huge benefits for the entire society. So I believe this deserves and behooves us to make a strategic investment. We need to have a mid to long-term perspective in this regard. And the last presenter, he mentioned the CO2 emission and how to do the CCS. and there is such a vast amount of carbon dioxide in the air, how we can capture and store the carbon. Well, in this regard, the size of the market is rather small in size, but when it comes to the maritime industry, but onshore CCS, many companies are bracing themselves. SKENS, Hyundai Engineering Construction, and POSCO. All those countries, all those companies are working heavily on and investing heavily in this land-based CCS. But in order to use this on board, well, we need to develop new technology and new systems because, well, there is new rolling pitch, heaving, and all different behaviors ships would show. And the contamination and the seawater caused and triggered erosion and the limitation and the limited space, but these factors should be taken into consideration in developing technology for the maritime vessels. And this would require further collaboration. Thank you.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. And next, Professor Shin Kyung-hoon, you have the floor. Good morning. I am Shin Kyung-hoon from Hanyang University. I want to focus. I have a scholar studying the earth and marine science and the biologies of ocean. And after listening to the 4 presentations and the previous panels, I wanted to touch upon how the international community in this 21st century has realized that for continued prosperity, we need to address the most urgent challenge of climate change. And directly related to this, energy issues. The energy challenges would require a transition in energy sources. So far, we have been relying on petroleum, fossil fuels for science and technology development and the civilization advancement. But as a side effect, climate change has emerged, will get worse, and possibly threaten the existence of humanity. To address this challenge, what the consensus is that at least we must become carbon neutral very quickly. If possible, we need to maintain the CO2 emissions at the level of 2000, but by 2030, 2050, we do need to never exceed the level of that CO2 emission. If not, we will go through the tipping point, according to climatologists. So we've heard the 4 presentations today. And the 4 presentations covered a wide range of topics, but basically they all relate to carbon emissions and transitioning away from petroleum. The first presenter, well, the second presenter was Deputy President Lee Eun-kyung. You mentioned the ship transition rate, and of course, this relates deeply with CO2 emissions, to reduce CO2 emissions. So shipbuilding is one of the backbone industries in Korea. And at this crossroads, we should take the lead in making that transition for sustainable development of our shipbuilding industry by creating new demand and meeting the new demand. And I think Dr. Lee presented some good ideas and proposals about the transition of fuel, the container transitions, and port facility transitions as well. So I think all those elements are interconnected, And the third presenter was Dr. Seo, who mentioned the marine biology and the energy that can come from that. And in particular, he focused on the microalgae and the seaweeds. And as we heard from the presentation, this relates to blue food and carbon sinks, using the vital resources in the ocean as blue carbon. In particular, seaweeds can serve as a food, but also be used in producing many value-added products. R&D in this sector has been led by Korea, and the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries have been investing very boldly in this R&D, and recently the Korea-US Joint International Research will elevate the outcomes of such R&D. And I am very interested in this sector, and I have been following the research outcomes very keenly. And as we heard from the presentation, mass production is really the key factor here. We can find very many different useful materials and develop technology to refine them, but in the end, if we do not have enough ingredients, then we cannot meet the demand. So that can be a limiting factor to the industry, the mass production of seaweeds. We need to build a system that will enable mass production, and this is where concentrated investment will be required, as well as R&D efforts. And last but not least, President Lee Gi-taek gave us a presentation about how the human civilization has been relying on ammonia, cement, steel, and plastics as key materials. The relations between CO2 and climate change was very clearly demonstrated with strong and clear evidence. And regarding carbon neutrality, in Korea, the industries have been heavily using petroleum, although Korea does not produce petroleum, using refining technologies, chemical processes. We have used petroleum to turn them into plastics, cement, and steel. And those types of industries, are not really in fitting with our transition towards an eco-friendly industry. And in that transition, we can use the ocean. And we need to consider a number of different ways to do this. And with that, we also need to consider oceans and technology. And also, oceans are a big source of blue carbon and carbon sink. So you presented new ideas of how we can tap into the ocean in this manner, and I am very keenly interested in that possibility. And going forward, scholars, researchers in ocean science and engineering need to work together. This is a fairly new sector globally, so if we can make some bold investments, then I think we can really become a leader. Thank you.
네.
Thank you very much. Panel discussion usually takes a lot of time, but today's panelists have been very efficient in time management. I really appreciate that we have sufficient time to address questions from the floor. Now, I'd like to ask some questions to our presenters. First,
Dr. Lee Yeon-kyung. by 2030 and 2050, IMO has put forward a very strong future strategy. What do you think? For 2030 and 2050, you shared with us what the plan is. And what's also important is for port cities like Busan, the excellence of ports, particularly here in Busan, the port is one of the best in the world. For carbon neutrality in ports, without a good strategy, then the Busan may go down the rankings of ports. So what do you think? In terms of carbon emission reduction, how far along is Busan, the Busan port? Well, as a national strategy from shipping to ports, carbon neutrality strategy is being set up. Fuel development is also ongoing accordingly. So compared to other countries, I don't think that Korea is lagging behind. But as I mentioned in my presentation, if you look at different sectors one by one, we seem to be doing okay. But the fact that the fuel is transitioning is a trend and a flow. Without a supporting structure of an overall flow, we will never be enough. In terms of bunkering, energy bunkering, and hydrogen research is happening. But what type of bunkering would be optimal? And looking at the ship movements, which country will be the main supplier, and what are some of the ships that never get called to port to Busan, but what more can we attract to Busan ports in terms of services? This is where we are lacking. And I think other countries are looking into these matters as well. So if we can place more research efforts here, I think we will be able to maintain our current status. And eco-friendliness at the IMO, Korea is one of the leaders for this movement. And if we can do this successfully, our status as a world port can go up. So I have trust in our technological prowess. Yes, at the IMO, there are a number of questions they're pondering on, and because of ship fuel, CO2 emissions, more than 2% of CO2 emissions is accounted for by shipping, which is almost equivalent to the entire emissions from Germany. So if nothing is done by 2050, the CO2 emissions from India could be coming from shipping. So we need to do something right now. And the IMO continues to say that vessel fuels can be transitioned to eco-friendly fuels, and what's most important here is to make eco-friendly ships. We have a representative from HD Hyundai. The CEO himself is here today. What's the shipbuilding status of Korea right now in terms of eco-friendliness? Well, that's not an area of my expertise, but to answer that question to the best of my ability, I felt that, and as he has mentioned, the CEO of HD Engineering has mentioned, the fact that fuel is transitioning means that the ships will become more and more expensive, and it will require more and more investment to make these ships. And can we make profit out of that? Making one ship, and that ship will be in operation for 30, 40 years, and what to do with the existing ships? How do we make all this to our benefit, and what is the fuel to choose? Well, these are very tough questions. I'm not sure about what happens with the shipbuilding process, but we do need to work together to make this industry economically viable, from operation to manufacturing to the end use. We need to think about the strategic step to take for shipbuilding. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to turn to Dr. Seo of KIMST. I would like to know the biomass, the seaweed biomass, can capture a huge amount of carbon. And I truly see how important the research as to that is. The seaweed biomass industry in Korea. Would you please share with us the status of that industry in Korea? Although I'm not working in the field, I'm in the research area, but to my understanding, in Korea, the mass production of seaweed is not even enough to cover the consumption at the current level. The seaweed farm, the kelp produced, mostly used for the abalone aquaculture. So liver and seaweed, we consume it, or other aquaculture farms use them and consume them. It's not more than that, but in order to produce high-value items and products, based on my understanding, up to 70% we have to import from European countries because, well, they don't consume seaweed, they produce domestically. I was so shocked to see that we are highly reliant on the imported seaweed. I think that's a very serious problem we have to tackle, and we have such an advanced aquaculture technique and technology, and that is the reason why ARPA-E proposed us to have this collaborative project. We are not making the most of our advantages, so if possible, I believe if we can expand the seaweed farms, not to eat into the livelihood of the seaweed farms, we should be able to grow seaweed for the production of commercial products. Thank you. National Industrial Complex project and plans have been announced, but the natural biomass industrial complex was part of the plan. But businesses need to be interested in this area. But the businesses, I'd like to know whether they are interested in the seaweed biomass as well. There are many startups coming up, but those companies are interested in well-cultivated microalgae, the seaweed. Seaweed farms need to be in large scale, so there are not many startups which are into the seaweed farming industry. So existing seaweed farms or aquaculture farms are only interested in this new project. That is why the foundation should be built and created by the country.
Thank you. I would now like to invite President Lee Gi-taek to take the floor. Personally, I do think that the ocean is a vast area involving engineering and many different areas of specialty such as offshore plants, shipping, logistics, and ports. All these ocean sectors, I do believe, is lagging behind advanced technology such as semiconductors and even aerospace. But I think ocean is an important carbon sink, and this is where very important advanced technology can be developed. So because of this general perception that oceans is not about advanced technology, attracting talent is challenging. So in your view, I do know that the government commitment will be important and the university efforts will be important. What are efforts that we need in different players and stakeholders? Yes, that's a very difficult question. First of all, at the national level, as I mentioned at the beginning, no matter what national strategy is adopted, students will choose their area of expertise and a career path where they see a viable future. So no matter how the government may support the oceans and technology, without a promising future, oceans and technology will never attract good talent. So first of all, the government should think about growing the ocean-based industry in a different way than before. We need to develop the ocean industry through policy support so that a star company can be made, and we need a long-term research. And at graduate schools, to cultivate and foster good talents, we need to first produce good scientists and scholars and professors. And graduate schools need to be more revitalized. And I think this is like which comes first, the chicken or the egg? In the ocean science sector, openness must become number one. So first of all, when many people come to the ocean science sector, when graduate school students and professors are selected, and when researchers are selected for government-funded research institutes, we need to be very open-minded about non-ocean specialists, because when they come, we can open up a new opportunity in the ocean science sector. And only when that happens, we can attract new talent. For example, if the ocean segment is not open enough, then I don't think we can develop this sector, because primarily the academic arena and the research arena, when they select the principal researchers, they need to be very open-minded. And at the national level, they need to provide, at minimum, policy support to enable an industry to grow out of this sector. And when that happens, I think we can really have a promising future. Thank you. That was a very insightful point. Openness is very important. I agree, and you were right to the point. So now that we have heard from all three speakers, and I have asked all of my questions to the speakers, I would like to ask our three panels to just give us concluding remarks very shortly, starting with Vice President Choi, to conclude this marine policy session.
I've already shared my comments on three different aspects and three different presentations. The marine technology and science. From that perspective, the ocean is not that high in the minds of the people. The semiconductor, the battery industry, and other shipbuilding industry, well, those industries are the first thing that comes to mind to the Korean people. So the maritime industry and the oceans and fisheries to have a strong position in the national economy and to attract sufficient investment, I believe we need to raise the public awareness as to this. But one person's effort is not enough at all. From the government all the way to the businesses as well as the research organizations need to fully dedicate themselves to this end. And I believe, like the Federation of Business Leaders, we need to have an association of maritime leaders. Now I'd like to turn to Mr. Bae, and Jeju Island is very popular these days. And there is such a large-scale project going on. There are various emerging industries and subsectors within the maritime industry, especially the machineries manufacturing for the shipbuilding industry, like smart machineries and the parts and equipment, and autonomous navigation system and equipment. These are the very promising subsectors, but shipbuilding industry is not enough to cover all different areas and all such a variety of new technologies. That's why I believe this should be perceived as a nationwide project. When it comes to shipbuilding, well, we have achieved such a great success We have the 3 largest shipbuilders in the world in Korea. The ship parts and components, we need to grow and nurture and raise new businesses and strong businesses because we are highly reliant on the European countries and Northern European countries. And this requires collaboration and cooperation between the university and the businesses to nurture new talents. Thank you.
우리 신경훈 교수님은
Professor Shin, since you are also leading the Institute of Earth and Marine Science, any further comments? Well, yes. Atmospheric and hydrospheric science is an area that I am engaged in, but compared to other sectors, I think oceans science has been lacking. But in terms of shipbuilding, Korea is internationally very competitive. And as mentioned before, ocean science, based on ocean science, industries need to be developed and starting now. And for this to happen, yes, openness was mentioned before, and I am within a university, and the general trend of university is to allow for students to choose their own major. About more than 30% of students will be able to freely choose their major. But the concern is that because AI, software, secondary batteries, semiconductors have been so popular, most students may just flock to those areas, because then the nation will not have a balanced number of students across different fields. But of course, the students need to be respected of their autonomy in their learning and their specialty areas. So in different academic fields, each field has to become competitive on their own and be able to attract students. And as Mr. Lee has mentioned before, we need to be open and we need to be able to attract people of different specialties and expertise, because different areas can connect very well to ocean science. And through education and research that is open to other sectors, I think ocean science can develop further. And when that happens, I think we can become more competitive in this field. Thank you very much. And with that, I'd like to conclude the marine policy session, which has been most enthusiastic of all of the policy sessions that we've had. I'd like to thank 4 presenters and 3 panels. And this is the end of the panel discussion of the marine policy session. Thank you for joining us. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank. Please give another big hand to the moderator and all the speakers. So we will have a photo session. Please remain on stage for the photo. The Director General Kim Sung-bum will come up to the stage for the photo session as well. Oh, he has left us. So the moderator and the speakers and panels will have a photo session. Thank you for the passionate presentations and discussions.
어디 중간 조금 자리 이동하실까요? 괜찮습니까? 네, 그럼 곧바로 진행하겠습니다. 죄송하네요. 뒤에 테이블을 치우고 있습니다. 자, 지금 진행하겠습니다. 하나, 둘, 셋. 멋지게 첫 번째 세션을 이끌어 주셔서 진심으로 감사드립니다. 여러분 박수를 보내드릴까요?
Please give our speakers a big hand for the wonderful marine policy session. Thank you so much, and that's the end of the photo session as well as the marine policy session. Thank you for making this a wonderful session. And this is the end of the Marine Policy Session, the very first session of the 17th World Ocean Forum 2023. From 3:30 this afternoon, we will have the opening ceremony. So I'd like to ask your interest and participation at the opening session. Thank you. I will see you at the opening ceremony.